Alright. You ready to go? I'm ready. Ready? Let's go. Go, Digi!
Welcome, one and all, to the further milking of nostalgia. I'm some random internet nobody, and if you've stumbled onto this, odds are you too have an unhealthy attachment to a certain franchise of digital monsters. Full disclosure, I am not a Digidestined, nor have I seen Appmon completely, but I can say that I've wasted far too many neurons with reading, watching, and playing Digimon, be it the Cross Wars manga with its Zudomaru cameo, or grinding bullshit type experience to get my Solarmon to finally become an Alphamon. With the recent Digimon Anniversary Celebration broadcast and us hitting the ultimate stage of 2020, figured now is as good a time as any for this, since who knows if the franchise will even survive. Ha ha ha. I'm not going to bore anyone with the deep lore of Digimon, but suffice to say, it's a franchise that has always existed in Pokemon's shadow. It was once a monster taming and raising hardcore spin-off of Tamagotchi, morphed into its own entity that, like what cast the obscuring shadow, is forever shackled by nostalgia. The difference, however, is that while Pokemon serves up massive helpings of nostalgia bait and pandering post-Black and White, Digimon, aside from the recent games, has been reduced to nothing but nostalgia. Digimon Adventure is the face of the franchise, no matter how many fresh takes appear, and the recent renaissance of Digimon products have doubled down on that. Try was a pure attempt to bank on it, but did so terribly, with awful pacing, borderline nonsensical plot and characters, largely discarding the Digimon partner relationship, and overall not really understanding something called internal consistency, or really any kind of consistency at all. Kizuna was an attempt to undo the Gangrenous wound to Try, similar to how Battle of Gods was made in response to Dragon Ball Evolution. It's vastly better than Try, but that's a bar that's easier to pass than getting Numemon in World. It's still new, so I'll avoid spoilers, but I can say that it has tonal beats similar to the older movies, has instances of good animation and music, Omegamon's fight and slight redesign are well done, but it's also thematically trying to be Try, with the same forced drama, just less terrible. A few great shots does not undo the ham-fisted Doomsday Clock, really awkward new designs, or the truncating of said emotional moments in order to avoid implication and ambiguity. The message of growing up and moving on from your childhood being made by something that relies solely on nostalgia is so hypocritical that a Hippogriffamon would die by proxy. But none of that really matters for this. I merely wanted to highlight the continued adventure pandering. Heads up, I'll be using the American names for levels, but just in case, here are direct level comparisons where English will be the former of each pair. Rookie is Child, Champion is Adult, Ultimate is Perfect, and Mega is Ultimate. Super Ultimates are in a weird spot overlapping with Megas depending on the source, so Super Ultimate will still be used for the level above Mega. This video was also made to include info up to and including the 10th episode, so as always, spoiler warning. 2020, unlike the previous sequels, or rather midquels given O2's ending, is a remake of Digimon Adventure. From the start, the years jump to modern times minus a pandemic and ties packing for camp. Very quickly, the show utilizes the medium via show and not tell, such as when Izzy, Koshiro, pulls out his computer with a Tachikawa logo, or how Izzy hesitates to enter Tai's family's apartment. The former already highlights that Mimi Tachikawa comes from a fairly wealthy, tech-related family, and sets up a possible connection between the pair as a way to continue Tai's connection, while the latter says a lot about Izzy's own mental state. Knowing his background from the original, it's fitting, especially when contrasted to Tai's openness. The network tube, so to speak, heavily resembles the web portions of Hosoda's Our War Game, with some shots even using similar animation styles such as the use of alternate colored borderlines for characters, as is seen in the opening. Koromon's ear antenna twisting into a double helix, just as with Tentomon's antenna later on, is a nice little touch to the idea of evolution. They really go to great lengths to make the bond between Tai and Agumon feel real. When Tai rips the Argomon off of Agumon's head to help during the initial fight, they show Agumon's proud smile in response. It's the little interactions that really sell the bonds in the series thus far. The first animated Digivolution to Greymon is a wonderful little reference to the original Digimon series logo, sort of like in Cross Hunters, and it's stunning. They make sure to include muscular definition and insertion curves, all while playing with perspective in ways that emulate Hosoda. When Garurumon first shows up and saves Greymon, he says a little cocky joking line to which Greymon laughs and thanks him, showing him that Digimon have their own relationship and personalities, and generally making them more likable overall. Matt, Yamato, is still an edgelord, but he's far more willing to go along with things, likely because TK, Takeru, is, and so far remains, absent. Again, the program goes with show don't tell by having Matt not know the station Izzy and Tai mention, directly indicating he's not from Tokyo. The entire fight of Garurumon and Greymon against Argomon looks like something out of an 80s OVA, especially the dual bite close range blasts. Tai understanding Matt's plan and going along with it, and Matt's unwillingness to explain it, again establishes their personalities in contrasts as well as complements without saying anything. When Agumon gets back up, the framing of the shot and sound effects are genuinely disconcerting. The framing and cut are more akin to a horror film than not, and would make many horror directors envious. Matt's dedication to save Tokyo despite not living there was another obvious clue to TK, and indicates that he lives there, even if he is yet to be truly introduced. Even the entire scene setting up and birthing Omnimon, Omegamon, looks good. Omega really does resemble our work game's design, and the self-wrapping cloak on his first appearance, and his frame when he gets wrapped up in Agumon's tentacles, really highlights that the team has made an effort to stick to the character sheets and have been doing a great job knowing how wiry his frame looks. So far, this has been a fairly chronological description of what the series has done surprisingly well, but once again, I must delve into the wannabe writer playbook, and this time, it's for the appearance of Omegamon. Look, I'll be the first to praise Omegamon. It's a sleek and simple design that perfectly encapsulates multiple themes. His red and white cloak, snow-white body that resembles armor, crest-like head protrusions, and sword with shield shoulder are immediately evocative of a holy knight. The black wiry body that connects his arms to his torso and torso to pelvis both emphasize the white of his design and make his white bulkier sections pop. They also make him still feel digital, since they resemble a computer cable. His arms are obviously derived from War Greymon and Metal Garurumon, but they're kept as being almost thirds, where the arms are the vestiges of their strength, while the body's the melding of the individual Digimon's wills. The one flaw I can even see in his design is that the Crest of Courage and Friendship fusion on his chest looks awkward, given that it's just a stapled together two lateral halves. It's not really a cohesive combination, while the rest of his design is. The heroic theme that played on his first appearance still gives me chills. That scene will always be pure art to me, if only because it stood out to an even dumber kid version of myself that possible things I didn't think of could happen. In this case, it was two Digimon becoming one, but that impression stuck, so unfortunately I am an Omega soy boy at heart. The problem with 2020 is that it put the cart before the Unimon. Omegamon was never the end goal of adventure, and was in fact not even on the radar. His appearance in the movie genuinely felt like a miracle, not some preordained final destination. He was a crystallization of the entire journey the chosen children had been on, a fusion of their strongest partners tempered through all of their trials and tribulations, both physical and mental. He existed at the end of the journey because he was born of it, the wishes of the children from around the world merely fortifying and reinforcing the bonds Tai and Matt had with their partners that had been forged from their adventure. He was the embodiment of the Digimon adventure. That means he was only meaningful due to it. Using him this early means Omegamon has no such symbolism, since he's a foregone conclusion. It's no true miracle when he appears at a climax, as we in the cast now know he exists. Should this show truly have over 60 episodes, and there are ways to use this subversively though. For example, say Omegamon shows up and has a heroic moment at the Dark Master's equivalent climax, only to be struck down by a new enemy that signals the entry into completely uncharted territory, story-wise, for a new adventure story arc. Have the team encounter some other Mega or Super Ultimate Jogressmon, where one becomes a mentor rival to Omegamon, forcing him to realize that he beat Argomon and the other Megas due to raw power, and that relying on that same raw power will be useless when facing other Super Ultimates like Chaosmon. This would allow for further development of Agumon and Gabumon, who would have to learn to bond at a deeper level to, in essence, truly move as one, while also allowing for character interaction and drama for Tai and Matt that isn't out of place and feels fairly natural. The rest of 2020 similarly seems to understand show not tell, at least mostly, as well as internal consistency. For example, when the nuke explodes above Tokyo, an EMP is triggered, just as it would in real life, although a bit more temporary than what we'd experience. There are continuing reports of blackouts that lead to Sora being sent out for supplies by her mom, which creates a credible reason for her to have such supplies once they're pulled into the digital world. When Izzy mumbles to Kabuterimon about feeling like he was brought there alone to meet him, and Kabuterimon replies with insistence that he repeats himself, it immediately establishes their bond and sets up that Izzy has difficulty expressing himself, likely because of family difficulties. The use of the network as a space-time distorting tunnel to the digital world, a la 3D render of black holes' gravitational effects, really feels cohesive, and in turn it allows for the other children who were already pulled in to be more familiar with the setting due to having been there longer, despite leaving the real world at seemingly the same time. Not only does this flow naturally, but it allows the show to avoid every character having to be introduced as a fish out of water. Each character generally comes across as likable. Even the broody Matt has had his tendencies curbed and acts at least agreeable instead of downright vitriolic. Mimi's a full-on Ojo-sama, but thanks to linking her to a tech company grandfather who cares about people, as seen and presented by Izzy, she's able to be genuinely compassionate. Joe's hyperfixation on studying due to medical school pressure via his family is more overt. It's almost too much so, but it does give him more of a presence than before, with Goemon's eternal optimism allowing for Joe's selflessness to still shine through even when he's hyperfixated. Quite honestly, for all the characters, they feel like more well-rounded versions of their original selves, though that's with a few taken liberties like Joe. The introduction of TK and Hikari, could also alter that, especially if they remain as they were in Adventure and give a reason for Matt or Tai to become edgelords or refuse to compromise. Some specific praise is deserved for the Agumon and Gabumon Digivolution sequences. The use of previous forms feels like a build-up, and the over-exaggerated curves, such as Agumon's upper jaw or Gabumon's arms separating from his coat, are incredibly expressive, saying nothing of the individual details regarding musculature and how the two face in opposite directions. Giving Togemon a fight where she was moving rapidly like a real boxer felt wonderful, and even if the non-Omegamon Mons get comparatively shafted for their Digivolution sequences, what they do have is still so far well utilized and similarly expressive via over-exaggeration and perspective manipulation. Save for Bergemon, because screw animating flapping wings, I guess. Ogremon developing a rivalry with Greymon over his horn being broken was nice, and led to a surprisingly fluid self-sacrifice due to his warrior spirit. Flashback to the partners' previous lives in the war was fairly well done. It was a way to grant them a backstory and explain their strength and bonds to the children. It also gave them some unexpected depth when they were weeping thanks to their subconscious PTSD. The flashback also was nice enough to give a reason as to why TK and Kari, as well as the partners, are in a somewhat separate group from the others. Instead of the two angels just being broken plot devices, they now will likely be former members of the angel group that led the good Digimon. And the two served as a middle ground role between the angels and the legendary warriors that became the other six. They even showed Rossielmon in the memory, potentially setting up for May and some other tie-ins with Tri. Given that the Digivices are now smartphones, it's less jarring that Izzy's kept so separate from the group, but even that feels somewhat methodical, as Izzy'd likely determine the truth of the partner's past had he been present for Valdermon's speech. It also makes him and Kabuterimon feel closer, as per most of the others, save Sora and Tai, that had more time alone with their partners. It also allowed for a reason to have Waymon help the children later, in order to pay Izzy back for allowing him to escape the Tylemon. That's not to say there aren't flaws early on, but most are nitpicks, such as Ogremon's flying forces being green Corgermon instead of blue, or Soundbirdmon being a speaker instead of an actual Digimon. The awkward jiggle effects on Joe's tree hut also stands out, and the blatant copying of our wargame in the first few episodes really rides that line between homage and copy, even if the use of Argomon is a nice little nod to the Digimon Savers movie that simultaneously sidesteps Diaboromon and the obvious tie to our wargame Heat and Bite. Realistically, this is shaping up to be the highest quality Digimon show since Tamers, is what I would have said until episodes 9 and 10. I don't doubt that episode 10 was the first to be fully made post-pandemic, since animation quality takes a massive dive. Specifically, Metal Greymon's moving chest panels that slide to his belly, his horrifying chicken legs, or his instant transmission above the lake. Hell, even the fight choreography took a nosedive in competence. Metal Greymon shoots his left trident arm into Metal Tyrannomon's left claw, and then rushes in to bite his right claw, leading to a very awkward pose that feels completely unnatural. I especially like showing Giga Destroyer missiles in Metal Greymon's chest, only to instead shoot an energy blast. I'm no animator, so I can only imagine the difficulties in adjusting to the pandemic, especially in making sure individual artist styles are all corrected, but it's jarring, to say the least. Lastly, I'll throw out my own little hopeful headcanon. Given that we may have over 60 episodes, Metal Greymon was introduced in episode 10, and each of the next episodes introduces yet another ultimate, we're on track to have a non-teaser Omegamon by the late 30 or early 40 episodes. They'll leave almost a third to do something new, assuming they don't want to fix, try, or bridge the rough parts of Kizuna. Let's be optimistic and say something new, and then look at the puzzle pieces we've been given. First is almost a third of the series with Omegamon present. Next is the increased importance of Aldermon as the voice of the angels. While Omegamon may have more copies now than Sonic, an early rival in concept was Chaosmon, the Jogress of Bancho Leomon and Darkdramon. Since his inception, Chaosmon has been given a new mode, in which he swaps his Darkdramon arm for a flashier model, a Valdermon arm, to be specific. Let's also consider Darktramon's original bio from the card games, which states that he's an artificially made Digimon that is the secret weapon of the Navy SEALs Digimon copy pasta. Ogremon, as of episode 10, is presumed dead after having rebelled against Devimon, during which he lost his right eye. It'd be a stretch given his evolutionary line, but the precedent is there to say that Devimon, or his successors that would take over the process, took Ogremon and reconstructed him into a pure weapon as Darktrammon. Given his rivalry with Greymon, that would give any resulting Chaosmon a rival relationship with Omegamon. Should the Leomon and Darktrammon hide their identities, the Darktrammon born-again Ogremon could sacrifice himself to allow Chaosmon to use the last bits of the Angel's residual power near the end of the series, tying the Valdermon part together. The main issue is, so far, the total absence of Leomon, which is rather jarring in and of itself. Whether that alone nukes this idea from orbit, or his obvious absence portends an important appearance later, is in the hands of Yggdrasil and its corporate masters. That's what happens when Digimon Survive is left in purgatory. Weirdos like me are given far too much time to think about edgy tamagotchis. I feel like a broken record in these videos, but again I'll say that I hope the team surprises me, but I have my doubts. It had an incredibly promising start, but the pandering use of Omega and massive drop in quality, which is at least partly understandable, are still massive red flags. At the very least, the first few episodes are worth a Digidestined's time, and the themes are pure shonen fun thanks to the return of a former Digimon tenured musician. If you like animation, do yourself a favor and watch the Agumon and Gabumon Champion Digivolutions. You'll be glad you did. I'm going to end this video here before the sheer number of Survive jokes in the year 2020 I've been holding in gives me an aneurysm. Future Rando here. The fears are largely averted, save for some reason on the Omega Twins Ultimate premieres. The actual Ultimate Digivolution sequences for Greymon and Garurumon are just as jaw-dropping as the Champion ones, and their absence on their premiere episodes is a real head-scratcher, given that the alternatives look significantly worse. The choreography of Metal Greymon vs. Andromon shows that they really can stick to character sheets, but they still have a tendency to lack guttural power, as seen when Metal Greymon's Gigastorm only knocks Andromon back a couple of feet, Lilymon slowly flitters around the incredibly slow-moving attacks from Andromon's missiles, or they copy an unnerving hyperlordotic lumbar curve as seen in horror movies for Andromon, only to waste it with poor framing. Atler Kabuterimon's episode is a best for characterization, choreography, kabuki, animation, and Gurren Lagann / Getter 2 references. The Flash of Machine Dramon during Metal Greymon's evolution may set up for a Machine Dramon rivalry, and potentially Millenniumon for Omnimon. Andromon waking up just before he's I have no mouth and I must screamed by Lilymon means possible future PTSD for the kids when they reflect on murdering innocent Digimon controlled by flying iPod radios. Overall, 2020 seems to be a gem in the rough that's worth a watch even if you aren't blinded by nostalgia.